So the first step to achieving an A-star in A-level maths is understanding the exam. To succeed in any subject, you have to have a comprehensive understanding of what the exam entails. To do this, just look up your specific exam board, e.g. AQA, Edexcel, etc., and look at the past exam papers and the past examiner reports. This should give you all the information about what the exam entails, what it looks like, and what the examiners are looking for from you. But to briefly summarise, the majority of exam boards will have 3 main topics, and those will be pure, mechanics, statistics. Most exam boards usually have 3 papers, 2 being pure papers and 1 being combined between mechanics and statistics. And throughout an individual paper, the questions tend to get longer and harder as the paper progresses. Genuinely taking some time to look at how they phrase questions, what they look for in the answers, what the key things that a lot of students miss out on is really important to really succeeding in the subject. Even if you have all the knowledge required to get the top grade, if you don't do what the examiners are looking for, you won't get said grade. So once you've understood what the exam entails and what you'll be faced with at the end of the course, it is then time to focus on understanding the content you'll be tested on. Hopefully the majority of understanding will take place within the classroom and from your teacher, but if not, here are some resources and some places you can go to. There are many YouTube channels devoted to explaining the content that the A-level maths course entails. I'm sure a simple YouTube search would help you find this, but to give the biggest one and the one I think is the most common would be TL Maths. There are also websites which can really help your understanding. Things such as Physics and Maths Tutor, Maths Genie, etc. are all really useful. Just so you know, I will leave links in the description to useful websites and useful YouTube channels so you can go check them out yourselves. And of course, textbooks can also be useful in helping you understand the content at hand. However, I find it's much easier to gain an understanding of a topic or concept from an interactive source, which is why I would really highly recommend emailing, messaging or talking to a teacher, classmate or friend when you are stuck on something within the course of A-level maths. Meeting up with someone and just asking questions directly about the things you don't understand is in my opinion the best way to gain understanding of that thing. And this is because when you're directly talking to someone about something, you can pick up on all of these threads which maybe YouTube videos, websites and textbooks don't really talk about. And there are 2 main reasons why understanding the content you'll be tested on is really important. The first is arguably a bit wishy-washy, but the whole point of school and education is to gain knowledge and understanding of the subjects of your choice. And the second, which is a little bit more pragmatic, is that if you understand something, you are much more likely to remember it. And this means you are much more likely to do well when you are faced with a question on that topic in the exam. And unfortunately, a lot of students rely way too much on rules of thumb when they're learning something, which means that when they're faced with something slightly different but the same concept, they lose the marks in the exam. And to show you what I mean by this, let's think of something as simple as y-intercepts. Now the y-intercept will be a term you were introduced to way earlier on in your academic career. The vast majority of students will be able to look at an equation in this form and be able to tell me that the y-intercept in this case is 5. However, if in the exam they were faced with a slightly different equation in a slightly different form, they would not be able to tell me what the y-intercept is. Even though fundamentally these are very similar questions which are both testing your understanding of what a y-intercept really is. And this is because on a fundamental level, lots of students didn't really understand why the y-intercept was 5 in this first case. They've just seen this in so many times and have been told it so many times that they just know, but they don't understand why. Really, the y-intercept is just the point where the curve crosses the y-axis, which happens to be the same point as when the x-coordinate is 0. So to find the y-intercept of any curve, just plug x equals 0 in and it will give you the y-intercept. And because when we have equations in this form here, when we plug x equals 0, the only term remaining is that final term. But because a lot of people don't take the time to really understand what they're learning, they'll see something which fundamentally tests the same knowledge as this very simple question here, but will lose the marks in the exam. And a very simple technique to know if you've truly understood something would be the Feynman technique. Essentially, all the Feynman technique entails is asking yourself the question, could I explain this to a 5-year-old? An alternative, but is pretty much the same thing, is to just keep asking the question why. And ask this question why to every conclusion or judgment you make within the course of A-level maths. For instance, why is it the limit at h tends to 0? Why does sine squared plus cos squared equals 1? Why do I reject HO? All these questions asking why will really test if you actually understand what you're doing or if you're just memorising a procedure. As a quick aside, if you would like some help in understanding the content of the A-level maths course, feel free to click the link in the description where you can show your interest in some personal maths tutoring. So once you've begun to understand the content, it is then time to practice the content. Now exam practice is really important, but a lot of people, myself included, often overly bang on about the importance of past papers. And don't get me wrong, past papers are super important, but what I think is really even more important within the scope of A-level maths is doing exam questions by topic. What I'd actually recommend is using exam questions by topic as your primary method of doing exam practice. And I'll explain why. And this is because once you reach a good level within A-level maths, there'll be certain topics which you know like that. What I mean by this is that there'll be certain topics which you know so well, and thus the questions on the topic you'll be so good at that you'll pretty much be able to answer them perfectly every time. Obviously, what these topics are will be individual and unique to you, but everyone will have certain topics which are really good at and don't really need to do practice questions on these topics. On the flip side to that, there'll be certain topics and concepts which you're not so strong on, i.e. the topics and concepts you're struggling with. And what a past paper is a collection of these two different types of topics, the ones you're really good at and the ones you're not so good at. Now it's really not the best use of your time to consistently be doing lots of questions you know you're good at when you can instead use that time to focus all of it on the questions you struggle with, which is why exam questions by topic are so useful, because you can solely focus on the questions you struggle with. The resource which I personally used to do these exam questions by topic was Physics and Maths Tutor. They have a great bank of past exam questions which are grouped by topic, and they even group sometimes by subtopic. So maybe you're struggling with integration, but what specific part of integration? Integration by parts? Okay, do this worksheet on specific questions about integration by parts. Now obviously this relies on the understanding step I talked about before, because there's no point really doing exam practice if you don't even understand what you're doing in the first place. Like I said, I personally use Physics and Maths Tutor, but I'm sure there are many other websites which perform the same function. Ultimately, the key to doing really well and achieving that A star in A-level maths is first understanding the exam, what the questions are like, what the questions entail, and what you need to do to get full marks. And then what you need to do is actually understand the content you're being asked, so that when in the exam you're faced with something slightly different but relies on the same understanding, you know what to do. And finally, once you've understood the exam, once you've understood the content, it's time to practice. And focus on your weaknesses by using exam questions by topic as your primary source for exam practice. Obviously still do the occasional past papers so you can see where your weaknesses are, you can see what your timings are like, etc. But really focus on those exam questions by topic as your primary source of exam practice. And once you've done all that, you should be in the best position possible to really achieve that A star in A-level maths. If you have any more specific questions or comments, please feel free to ask them down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon.